What's good, everybody? I'm Justin Miller, owner of Legends of Athletics. Back with another episode. In this episode, we're going to be talking about training fresh. What does that mean? How does that affect you as an athlete? And how do you approach your training for speed and overall sports performance, depending on what population of athlete that you are? If you like the content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and as always, be legendary. So, oftentimes in sports performance or speed coaching or on the internet, depending on if you're on Instagram, whether you're on Twitter or X now or TikTok, you always hear athletes talk about, you hear trainers talking about athletes should train fresh. Athletes have to be fresh in order to get the most benefit from training, and athletes have to be in a fresh mode in order to actually see gains in speed and things of that nature. So, what does that mean as an athlete? If you're watching this content and you're ingesting it and digesting it, how does this affect you? And where do you start? Where do you go? And so, the first thing I'll say is, like, if I was thinking about one word to describe training fresh, it would just mean being refreshed. So, being in a state of 100% or closest to 100% as you can be, and being in a mode to accept high stimulus in order to produce more speed, produce more power, produce more force, produce more strength, what have you. The list goes on. That is what training fresh to me actually means. In a nutshell. So if we were just using layman's terms off the street, that's what it means. To be fatigued is to be lethargic, to feel sluggish, to feel heavy, not feel like 100%. And so therefore, you're limited on what you can receive from training because you're not in the proper state to receive that from training. And so how does that affect us as coaches and athletes? And how do we combat those things if we want to see progress in our athletic endeavors in order to be the best us that we can be? Well, number one, if we want to train fresh, we can always take full recoveries, full rest breaks in between reps. So if you ran going by the book here, and this can always be tweaked and things like that, depending on what you're going for. If you what stimulus you're going for, are you going for better acceleration? Are you going for more conditioning? Trying to improve the work capacity, things of that nature. That's all that terminology means. And so if we're taking full rest, then if we ran a 10-yard sprint or 10 meters, depending on what metric you use, if we're running a 10-yard sprint, then we want to take 60 seconds to rest. If we ran a 20-yard sprint, we want to take 120 seconds or 2 minutes to rest. That gives us what they deem for recovery in between each rep. And so that allows our energy systems in the body to replenish, glycogen stores to replenish, and those things within our mitochondria, the big engine, those things to recover and replenish in order to make us the best that we can be. And that way we can go into the next rep. Let's say we got 6 reps, we got 8 reps, or what have you. We can go into that next rep and give 100% of our effort versus being fatigued and we're only able to give 70% of our effort or below. So,
okay, stop back by. Don't worry about your boy now. He's doing good.
It ain't got no gas in it.
So the biggest difference between conditioning and speed training is effort output, one, and also what you're able to do between each rep. So whenever you're conditioning, most people condition, they're running at 70%. Whenever we're going speed training, we're at our third and fourth gear whenever we're approaching the training as you get better. Now, to the untrained athlete, because you have not done speed training, those rest periods may be a little shorter just because you're not able to really reach your max potential in sprinting. But that's why I said these are by the book numbers. And so those are the things that I just want to kind of delve into. But I don't want to get too far off the path of that because this video is talking about training fresh versus training for fatigued. Now, when we talk about it, going to the next thing, we have to talk about populations. A lot of times when we look at our top speed coaches or we look at our best athletes and we're looking at their training and we want to mirror their training, we're looking at the 1% of athletes that are in professional sports. We don't really see a ton of videos, at least for me. The algorithm hadn't shown me these things, but we hadn't seen a ton of videos or a ton of information out there that discusses realistically discuss the collegiate population and, more importantly, the high school population and below. There is research out there for collegiate athletes to follow, as far as, like, protocols and what different universities and strength teams kind of do, strength and conditioning coaches do. But there's not a ton of information out there in regards to high school athletes and below. And those are the athletes that I'm talking to in this video. That's a population that I think is in a position to get the most information, and therefore get off the path of what they really need to do, and be in a state of confusion the most, because we just don't have a lot of information out there. And so whenever I'm approaching it, and I want to go back to the term fresh, unless you have full control over a population, it's impossible. If you're working with high school athletes, it's impossible to fully train fresh. And there is a post that I want to go to that I saw or seen, past tense, on Twitter the other day by Tony I think it's Villa. Give me 1 second. Tony Villani tweeted this out yesterday, December 12th, which I think may have been a couple days ago. And it's something that I think is very pertinent to what we're talking about. Because in the world of training high school athletes, and that's primarily what I work with, there's always going to be a room for adjustment and room for getting off schedule. There are very few days, and I do mean very few, like if the athletes are on a break, if the athletes are out for summer, things like that, that I'm on schedule. Most days I'm off schedule and having to adjust. But Coach Tony said this. He said, I spend so much time in my new role in the high school setting. He said, 1, having the program set up. 2, asking how they're feeling. 3, determining how they did the day before and have planned the day after. Totally scrapping the program and recommending something better for them. That, in an essence, is what training high school athletes is all about. Well, why do I say that? Because you can go, if you're a trainer, you have the ability to, depending on what your role is, how you kind of go about your business. If you're able to see the athletes training, that gives you so much more of the story than getting them after school and not seeing anything, or not asking them questions, or not inquiring about what they did that day. Because if the athletes are working out with their team, right, and they really have a strong or a heavy lift or a high intense lift, and you have high intense runs planned for the day, for that afternoon or that morning, just what have you, then it's not going to work. Because somebody's going to somebody is going to one is going to trump the other. But essentially, if both of you guys do the same thing, you're burning the stake, or burning both ends of the candles, and the only person that suffers in that is the athlete. And so it's very important to know, like, what they're doing, why they doing it, things like that. Now, you also got the other side of the coin, where you could have planned out what they have for the day. Somebody in their class gets in trouble. The team has to do some type of mandatory or punishment runs or punishment work or things like that. And then in most cases, let's be real, it's very few times that coaches, depending on the role and what they have on their plate, it's very few times they have planned out what they have for the day. And so you always have to be in a position to adapt and adjust your plan and what you want to do in order to fit them. For me personally, I always think it's great to have a plan A, B, and C. But what has worked for me the best in my capacity is just always having auxiliary work set up, and then my main lifts or the main things, the meat of the program, can always be adjusted. But those auxiliaries are always going to stay the same. And so, you can look at and kind of get a feel of most high schools and what they're going to do and what they kind of do and how they like to go about their structure. And then you always can plan auxiliary work around that will never interfere with what they're doing as a team. So that's the thing. Now, when you're working with a high school population, those are things you got to take into consideration. When you work with a professional athlete, you have none of those constraints, because 9 times out of 10, that athlete's working with you. They're your athlete 24/7, 7 days a week, and you can do what you want to do because you have that freedom without many restraints. Now, you may have some things that restrain you, or obligations, or parameters that constrict what you can do. Maybe they're under contract. maybe their strength coach or whoever care they're under has restrictions in that area or that arena. But outside of that, then they're free to do what they want to do. And so that fresh term comes back up because you have full control over the programming, and you have full control over what he or she will do throughout the day, what days, how long, reps, schemes, intensities, all that stuff comes into play because a professional athlete, they've earned that right. Now, I kind of went over my approach for, how I kind of go about these things. Like I said, my main things, I'm always going to be willing to add in, take out, increase intensity, decrease intensity, depending on when we're training, and then go from there. And then everything else, it kind of stays the same because you can always work different planes of motion. You can always find an alternative lift. Like if you got back squats programmed in for what you have for that afternoon, and they've already done back squats with the team, and that was like an hour or two ago because they probably have sports the last period. Well, if you have those things already programmed, you can just, instead of doing the back squats, you can do split squat, you can do deadlifts, you can do rear elevated squat, you can do isometrics, you can do a multitude of things around that and still get the same benefit and same effect. If that team or that athlete doesn't do a lot of explosive lifts, well, you can just program more explosive lifts into what y'all are doing. It's all a matter of just being smart in the scheme and knowing what you have to do. Also, is that athlete having to train, going back to high school, is that athlete training? Are you getting them after practice? Are you getting them after school? What time of year are you getting them? Are you getting them in season, off season? Are you getting them if they haven't worked out with you at all? Is it mid season? Is it late season? These are things that you have to take into effect in order to be the best coach, and also athletes in order to get the best that you can get from that programming. We were not in season for football, for instance. I would not run athletes at the same intensity that I would in the summer leading up to fall camp. I have to be smart and say, well, what gives me the biggest bang for my buck, and what are we needing today in order to get the stimulus, the appropriate stimulus and response that we need for a better tomorrow. And so those are the things I always keep in mind. Those are things I always just want to keep at the forefront of my mind. And I think that creates great outcomes. I think, like I said before, whenever we talk about being fresh and we talk about training athletes fresh, we have to think about what population we're talking to. And we also have to think about this, and this is going off topic, but the better you get at anything, the more influential you get at it. So, like right now, you guys watching me on YouTube, I got a few hundred subscribers. We're trying to grow the channel, and that's great. But I also have to be very aware and very cognizant of what I'm saying to you guys, because that's a power of influence naturally. And so I think a lot of times whenever coaches talk, they're talking in general, and sometimes you can work with a certain population so long that you become out of touch with what everybody else is doing. And so while I'm here and while I'm in this field, in this niche, and while I'm in this population, if that changes, if that does not change, while I'm with this population, then I want to make sure I'm giving you guys information that's able to, that everyone's able to use. And so I hope in this video that I laid the plan out I laid and defined plans out pretty clearly and succinctly as I could. I know this video may be a little longer than expected, but it is what it is. I hope I laid those things out clearly for you, and that you can take those things that I've said and use them in your own protocols in order to be a better athlete. Add them to your bag of tricks to be a better athlete, because there's an appropriate time and place for everything. I think a lot of coaches and players alike get caught up in the reels, get caught up in the algorithms, and they constantly give you new things. The algorithm constantly gives you the next best thing, novelty, and sometimes novelty can be our biggest detriment because you're not mastering anything. You're just doing a lot of stuff and you're never at a point of mastery. And so you got to take all those things into consideration. That's just being honest. And I could talk about this all day, but that's just the crux of the matter. And if you want to be a better athlete, you got to master the basics. It doesn't matter how what release you have. It doesn't matter how good your footwork is within the phone booth. If you can't catch the ball, it don't matter. If you can't get off the line of scrimmage, again, it doesn't matter. If you can't create separation, it doesn't matter. And so we have to focus and hone in on the things that matter in order to be the best coaches, the best athletes, the best trainers that we can be. And so that's just the reality of it. If you like the content, again, don't forget to like, subscribe. I hope this video helped at least one. And as always, be legendary.